Have you ever had one of those cries where it's like you're trying not to cry, but you have to cry? It was one of those, like, I had such a fucked up night and I did this to myself. That was what I kept thinking to myself. I did this to myself. I could have stayed home. I didn't have to get in the car. I didn't have to do any of this shit. This was some shady shit and I have no idea how I'm getting home. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. I appreciate those of you guys who come here every single week to participate in my platform. It really does mean an awful lot to me, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you're brand new to the channel, what we like to do here is learn, share, and grow through education and conversation. And this is the conversation portion. Sometimes I tell stories, sometimes I talk about my experiences, but it's always with the intent of being as honest and real as possible, even when it gets a little uncomfortable. So if you're into that sort of thing, I would highly suggest that you subscribe right here to this channel, and you can get more things by, watching these videos if you click the notification bell. So I suggest you do that. If you're a long-term follower or fan, I would also suggest that you support me on Patreon. I like to upload the True Tea videos way ahead of time on my Patreon. So if you want to get a little advanced tea, want to be one of the first people who leaves a comment, that's the way you should do it. So anyway, enough disclaimer. Let's jump into this video. But before we do, I would highly suggest that you go to your kitchen and grab yourself something to drink. Now, personally, I am drinking some youthberry tea by Teavana. Now, there was ice in this drink, but there no longer is because it is hot as hell in my apartment right now. This heat is transphobic, okay? Now, I'm going to be sipping this throughout the video because I'm dying, I'm melting, my lashes are falling off. But I come here to serve you. I come here to serve you. So anyway, let me serve myself some tea before we get into this video. So if you guys watched this video over here that I did about my issues that I have with the BDSM community, I referenced a story that I could tell you guys about why I do not want to be dominant, right? And a lot of you guys were like, hey, tell the story. So here I am to tell it. We're gonna be talking about the situation that put me off of the idea of being a dom basically forever. So let's go. So I'm going to be telling this story in the voice of how old I was when this happened to me. I was 19 years old when this happened. And as I said that, I'm realizing that this happened almost 10 years ago. Wow. I am old. But I made a lot of mistakes back then. There's a lot of things that didn't make sense. So setting the stage for who I was when I was 19 years old. 19 was the year that I started taking hormones. It was a time of incredible insecurity for me. I definitely did not have a sense of self-love or the sense of self-love that I have now. And I was willing to do things that made me really uncomfortable in order to feel some sort of acceptance or love for my gender mostly. And so, a lot of the things that I did in this story were just me putting up with shit that I shouldn't have put up with, and it all sort of crescendoing into a not so great experience for me. So yeah. So I've previously talked about this in other videos, but because of some of the stuff I experienced, I had a lot of very unhealthy ways of meeting men. And one of those ways that I would meet men was on a little website called Craigslist. I met all types of weird, interesting people from Craigslist. Some people who I'm still friends with now, some people who have scarred me for life. But like I mentioned in my last video, I am sort of drawn to dark energy sometimes. And so I get myself into a lot of experiences because I just sometimes think it's weird and I want to see where it goes. And hopefully one day that doesn't come back to bite me in the butt, but such is life sometimes. I have a lot of stories to tell because of it. But I say all that to say that I met this guy on Craigslist, and he was this like really handsome Latino lawyer guy. Now back then, the idea that a lawyer was interested in me, the idea that this handsome man was interested in me who had money, he had money, that just really meant a lot to me. The fact that I had this guy interested in me, it just meant the absolute world to me, right? But you know, this guy was not always the nicest kind of guy. You know, it was really common for me, especially on Craigslist, to be in situations where if I'm not ready to come over and suck his dick right now, I'm a nigger, I'm a faggot, I'm all types of slurs, right? And that sucks. It definitely sucks to, you know, deal with a lot of that. But I, again, didn't have the self-esteem, didn't have the self-love. So even though this Latino, you know, lawyer guy, we're gonna call him Jacob, right? Even though Jacob treated me not so well, I still was interested in meeting him, right? So this happened when I was back at home, right? This was when I was 19 years old, on break from school, back at home. It's a Thursday night, and Thursday nights at CalArts were all about partying and going to see the gallery that week. And so I kind of got into this sort of habit of going out and doing something. But I'm back at home, and home was not that fun for me. My parents, I told them that I was trans, and my dad had, you know, basically told me he wasn't going to financially support me in that way. And so I was staying with them rather. But I was trying not to be around them as much as possible. So I often would make an excuse to go out, which, you know, Craigslist was very helpful when it came to that, right? And so I was sitting at home on Thursday night, getting a little stir crazy, and I get a message from Jacob. And Jacob is like, hey, would you like to hang out? Now, Jacob sent me like 4 photos of him. And I was so enamored with these 4 photos of him. He was just such a handsome, like good looking, clean cut guy, which was what I was into back then. He didn't have a beard. So that just tells you how different my taste was back then. You know, and I was really excited. Jacob told me that he lived in like this luxury apartment where all these young and sexy people are always partying. And honestly, it just sounded like a good time instead of, you know, staying at home. So Jacob lived in Pasadena. I lived in the San Gabriel Valley, right? And so one thing that's gonna become a little clear in this video is that I have no idea, I still don't, but back then I definitely didn't really have an idea of how LA was set up. So in my mind, almost anything in LA was far away, but from all the people that I knew that lived in LA, it's in my mind, they all lived close to each other. Living in LA now, I know that's not quite the case, but back then I didn't know no better. So anyway, so he lives in Pasadena, and so he decides to call me a cab. He called me a cab. I mean, and to me, I've never had a man call a cab for me. This was before Lyft and Uber, so I was like, oh, he got money, you know, like he got money. He's calling me a cab, you know, like, okay. So I got really excited. I wore like this black dress that I got from a thrift store. I was super just excited to come down and, you know, just have a good time with someone, right? And so I'm in the car, and I think this car drive was about like, I think it was over $100, right? And looking back, this was not smart. Me jumping into a cab to meet a guy who I've never met before at a time in night. I mean, it was midnight where like I couldn't jump on a train. I didn't even know how to get home from where we were. I didn't even know where we were going. Like, this was not smart. But again, back then my judgment was not really there. So anyway, we pull up to the apartment complex, and it looks like a nice apartment complex, but it didn't look like ritzy or kind of like amazing the way that he had described it. And so this man walks up to the car, and, you know, I roll down the window, and I'm staring right at somebody's grandpa. Now, in the pictures that he had sent me, he looked like he was about in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. This man who greeted me at the door had to be in his 60s. And this was back during the time of like Yahoo messaging. And so, you know, having pictures that didn't quite look like they were good quality wasn't uncommon, but this was definitely a photo from about 20 years ago. And I didn't really catch that, right? And so I'm kind of upset, but also that little weird devil in my mind is like, well, maybe this will be a good time still. I mean, I don't know. He doesn't look anything like his photos, but who knows, right? And honestly, I just so much didn't want to be at home that I was willing to sort of sit there and, you know, spend some time with this guy, if only to wait till the time when the buses start running again. And so I can figure out how to get home from there. So we walk up to his apartment, and as we're walking through, it becomes real clear to me that this is not any sort of like resort luxury apartment complex at all. I don't think that there are young, sexy people who live here. I think there are maybe people who are younger than him. But you know, the way he described it was like these Playboy models were just all walking around and just so sexy. But like, it was like a nice apartment complex, but nothing too, you know, we have different definitions of fun and nice, right? So we go up to his place, and keep in mind, guys, back then, 19-year-old me, yes, I was very insecure, but I was also a bit of a princess, you know? I definitely had the mindset back then of men need to not only pay for everything, but wait on me hand and foot. That's just how it is. That's just what I deserve, you know? And so that was definitely the, you know, the way that I approached this. And so, we walk in and I ask him, you know, can I get a drink, you know? And I was back then so used to men making my drink, you know, and doing it as like a big thing. It was kind of sexy and flirty for me to be like, oh, can I get a drink? And he'd be like, yeah, I'll make you a drink, you know? That was kind of the thing I was used to. These days, I don't want a man to make me a drink. I don't trust them unless I know them, right? But back then, I wanted him to make me a drink. And so instead of that, he gestured over to the fridge and was like, there's stuff in there if you want to make yourself a drink. And I interpreted that as like a little bit disrespect, you know, this guy doesn't look like his pictures. He's not making me a drink. This is not going well. But you know what? I try not to make a big deal about it because what am I going to do anyway? And so I go into the kitchen, make myself a drink, make it very, very strong because I realized this is going to be a long night. And so we sit on the couch. We had planned on watching a movie. This was the year, I think, when Star Trek came out. Some space movie. I'm pretty sure it was Star Trek though. That's when it came out, and I had not seen it, and so I was super excited to watch this movie. And so we grab the DVD. I go to plop it in. DVD player's not working, right? And I'm sitting there thinking like, there's no way in hell this guy didn't know his DVD player didn't work before I got over here, right? So I'm annoyed and I like, so are you gonna fix the DVD player? And he's like, oh, I don't understand how it works. Can you fix it for me? So I'm like, I made my own drink. I'm fixing your DVD player. Now I'm playing tech support. This is not going well. Also, you don't look like your photos. This is not going well. This is not going the way I would like for it to go, right? But I try to be compliant. I don't want to make a big deal. I don't want to be dramatic. So I sit down and I fixes the DVD player, right? So I plop the disc in. I got my strong vodka cran, and I'm just ready to, at the very least, enjoy this movie, right? And so I'm sitting there, movie's starting up. The first dialogue scene comes up. And this guy proceeds to repeat every line, complete with side effects, throughout the movie. And again, I was excited to see this movie. I wanted to see this movie, but I can't watch it without hearing him recite his stuff. So I'm sitting over here like, this is strike 4. I need to figure out what I'm doing and how I'm gonna get home. And so then I start thinking, right? I switch into survival mode, which was not uncommon for me to switch into. And I start thinking about ways that I could possibly get home. And then I remembered that there was a guy who lived out in Los Angeles who I'd been talking to for a bit. And every time I talked to him, it was always around this time. So I could probably get him to come and pick me up, right? Now this guy, we're gonna call him Larry, which I think is what I called him in the other video. Now, Larry is also an older man, but he was a very handsome older man, you know? He was an older man who, you know, was an actor. And in the 80s, he had like this one-hit wonder and everyone forgot about it. And he was, you know, this actor who basically, he was Italian. He did all these, like, he did these roles in these short films where he was always some mob boss, you know, and he was just a really interesting, cool character. Like, he was a huge cornball. And I knew that he would at least be an interesting person to hang out with. And I knew that from all of our interactions that he was at least a very nice person. And we had talked about hanging out in the past, but the issue always was that I wasn't in LA. But here I was in LA. Now we can meet, and also he could take me home. And so I realized that I need to figure out where we are, and then get to an area where I could potentially make a phone call. And so I look around his apartment as we're sitting there watching the movie. I see a piece of mail, and I grab the mail, and I go to the bathroom, and I start texting Larry. And eventually I call Larry and I tell him, hey, I'm on this really, 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 really bad date. Can you come and pick me up, right? And I spend a little bit of extra time in the bathroom because I'm really not wanting to interact with this guy, right? And so Larry agrees to come and get me. And so after a couple of minutes of being in the bathroom and pretending I had, I ate some bad lunch, I come out. And when I come out, the guy's not sitting on the couch anymore. The movie's playing, but the guy's not sitting on the couch anymore. He's in the other room, totally naked, with a hard-on on, asking me to touch him. And, I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm going to be able to get out of this. And sometimes in situations like this, what I do is I just try to comply, right? Because I don't really know where this was going to go. And from previous interactions with this guy, I already knew that he was a little erratic, right? And I didn't know how things would go. So I sat at the edge of the bed and I just kind of watched him play with himself. And I told him that I was going to leave because this was not what I thought we were going to be doing. And so, I'm getting up to leave. I get text messages from Larry saying that he's coming. I don't care. Larry saying that he's coming. And I get up and start leaving. As I'm leaving, he's yelling out to me, how much? I'll pay you, I'll give you this much for a blowjob, And I'm just like confidently leaving the apartment and saying, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. I'm gonna go, right? And so as I'm leaving, he's yelling, you slut, you whore, you bitch, And I happily close the door and start moseying my way down to the garage, right? And so I'm going down to the garage and it's like a scene out of a movie, right? I come up and Larry, sorry, wow. I keep saying his name. Larry, I don't care. Larry comes up and he is in this beautiful silver car, right? He's in this beautiful silver car that has his last name on it. And by his last name, I mean his stage name. So super, 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 super corny. But it was like a scene out of a movie. He comes, he's this handsome, well-dressed older man. He has this beautiful car, and I'm the damsel in distress who needs saving, right? And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. So oh my God, And so I give him a big old kiss, I give him a hug, and we get into his car. And so we're driving down the freeway, right? And, I start noticing a couple of things, right? First of all, I noticed that we're not really driving near my house. I'd given him my address. I told him that I wanted to be taken home, but he's driving me in a different direction, right? And so I ask him, what's going on? And he says, oh, we're going to my place. And I was like, okay. But, it was one of those things where this was not exactly what I asked for, but also I was so happy to be out of that situation. I was so happy to be, not in the apartment with this weird guy, that when he was like, oh, we're gonna go to my place, I guess I was like, fine. And mind you, I'm a little tipsy at this point too. But I noticed that there's more that's off about him. And I asked him are you okay? What's going on? He was like, yeah, I'm fine. I just did a couple lines of blow before I came down here. Now, back then, I was particularly ignorant about coke. I still don't get it, and I don't do it. But all I knew after he told me that he did coke before coming down was that we were definitely gonna die. Like, I'm definitely gonna get into a car accident. I'm going to die. That's what's happening. And so I start to like sink back into the, into the seat, bracing for impact in case we get into a bad accident, right? But we don't. We managed to get to his apartment safe and sound, and I do not know at all where we are. And so he leads me into his apartment, right? Now, his apartment was one of the weirdest apartments to this day that I've ever seen, right? To give you kind of an idea of what his apartment was like, he did not have any normal lights, he didn't have like any fluorescent lights. His entire apartment was lit by, during the day, natural lighting that would come in through his windows, but all around the apartment were these neon signs that he had gotten from, I guess, sets that he was on, right? And so it's just a dark apartment that's only lit in unnatural ways. There's like blue lights here, and there. He's got all these masks like delicately placed around his wall, right? Very evenly spaced. In the middle of his apartment is a bed that at the time I didn't quite know, but now I know was like one of those BDSM beds where you can, do a bunch of different things and tie people up and right? And then right at the foot of his bed, he had this kind of altar with a bunch of family photos and this fur shawl and just all these things, right? And so, I'm a little tipsy and I'm having a bad night. So naturally, I want another drink. And so I go to the kitchen, I make myself a drink. I'm not trying to be a princess about it. I pour a strong one and I sit down on this little sort of like, he had this like high heel sort of seat in his apartment. His apartment was wild and wacky, right? And so I sit down and I'm just sort of so happy to be out of that situation. So excited to not be there anymore. And so I'm sitting on the couch having this conversation with him, telling him about everything, telling him how my night was. And we're shooting the shit and having a decent time. But then at a certain point, the vibe changes, right? He decides that he's gonna put something on in the VHS player. You can tell the story's 10 years old because of the fact that he had a VHS player still. He went and got this VHS and plopped it in, and he starts playing this transgender porn, right? And I'm just kind of sitting there, listening to him talk to me, but also the weirdness of like trans porn playing behind me. And he starts telling me this story, right? So like I said, Larry was a guy who back in the 80s, he had like a one-hit wonder and no one knows who he is now. But for like that little bit of time where he was the hot shit, he went to this fashion show, right? And at this fashion show, he met this beautiful woman, just this gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous woman, right? And trigger warning, she, got him to come home with her, right? And from what he says to me, from what he told me in the story, this woman took him home and in his words, raped him, right? And he explained to me that ever since that moment, he's had a bit of a fetish, right? And so he wanted me to do something for him, right? And so, like I said, he had all of these things around his room. It was all neon lit light. There was no natural light. And he had this altar in the front of his bed. He explained to me that the altar was an altar to his family, right? His family had passed away in a car accident. Like all of his family was in one car and they died, right? And he just had this like beautiful altar with old pictures of him and old pictures of his family and this fur shawl and various other items, right? And so he tells me that so he hands me a bunch of different things, right? He takes a mask off the wall He goes into his closet and he digs out these white fishnets and this glow-in-the-dark makeup, right? And he also asked me to wear the first shawl sitting on the altar that belonged to his dead mother. He told me, I want you to go in there, put all of this on, and come out, right? And I'm drunk, okay? And I'm like low-key, I don't want to do this, but this is kind of weird and zany. So like, maybe I'll do it, right? And so I go into the bathroom. I start putting on the glow-in-the-dark makeup, but then I realize it doesn't make any sense because he wants me to wear the mask. And so I put all that on. I put the white fishnets on, the first shawl, and I come out. I do not know at all where this is leading, right? And so I come out, and Larry is bent over on the bed, totally naked, ass out, and there's a bullwhip sitting right at the edge of the bed. And he says to me, whip me. Now, at that time in my life, I was vaguely familiar with BDSM, but I'd never experienced it, been around it. I had gone to swinger parties and things where people were doing BDSM stuff, but I had no understanding of what this was at all, right? And so he tells me to pick up the whip and to hit him as hard as possible. Now, there were two sides of my mind in the situation. There was the side of my mind that was like, I don't want to fucking do this, right? Then there's the other side of my mind that, was drunk and low-key had a really shitty night and felt like, maybe I could take out some of my frustration and anger on tonight on this guy, right? And so I pick up the whip and I start whacking him. And with every whack, I'm thinking about my day. I'm thinking about everything that's happened to me today, everything that I did, the fact that I could have just stayed home. I could have just stayed home. Now I'm in this creepy apartment with this guy who is making me whip him because this is my way of paying him back for giving me a ride, right? He's fucked up on drugs. I don't know where I am. I don't know how I'm getting home. And I'm thinking all this while I'm drunk. And so I keep hitting him and I keep hitting him, but I start to slowly but surely break down completely. Like, have you ever had one of those cries where it's like you're trying not to cry, but you have to cry? It was one of those, like, I had such a fucked up night and I did this to myself. That was what I kept thinking to myself. I did this to myself. I could have stayed home. I didn't have to get in the car. I didn't have to do any of this shit. This was some shady shit and I have no idea how I'm getting home. As I'm crying, he starts getting mad at me. He starts yelling at me. He starts telling me about how he's been having a shitty day. He's about to get evicted from his apartment. He's going through all this shit and I'm being loud and I'm gonna be the reason why he gets kicked out. And I'm just uncontrollably crying. I'm 19 years old, guys. I had never been in a situation like this. I had never wanted to be in a situation like this. And mind you, part of my anger and frustration was, being a Black trans woman, you have a lot of men who only want you to be dominant, right? I'd always been very clear about how I feel about topping, how I feel about being a dominant person in a relationship. And I always had whatever I said basically dismissed, and I was encouraged to be dominant, right? And I've always hated how loudly I say to men that I'm not that way, that I don't want to dominate you, that I don't want to top you, that that's not who I am, that's not how I get off, that's not what I enjoy. And it's always hurt me that these men, regardless of everything I've told them, just want to get their little fantasy off. It really hurt me. It really sort of fucks with my mind and my emotions, right? And so I'm sitting here realizing that this is all this guy wanted from me. It's for me to realize his fucking fantasy. And that's why he brought me home. He didn't care about me not having a good time. He didn't care about me being in an unsafe situation. He just wanted to get his rocks off, you know? And back then I definitely would have those moments where, yeah, maybe I would go and do some shady shit with this guy, but sometimes it would come back to me and I would feel really hurt by the fact that that's the only reason these men wanted me. They only wanted me so that they could take advantage of me, right? And so I'm crying uncontrollably. He, you know, starts throwing my clothes at me and says, get dressed, I'm gonna fucking take you home, right? And so I'm still crying. I'm crying as I'm putting my clothes on. It's just all caving. You know, it's one of those cries where thing upon thing upon thing upon thing upon thing is just compounding. My parents don't like that I'm trans. I'm, you know, having these shitty experiences with men. Men only want to use me. It's just all piling and I'm just crying, just uncontrollably crying. I just cannot stop myself. And so we get in his car and we're driving through the street and I realize that this guy is fucked up because he starts swerving. He starts like almost getting into accidents. And so I'm having a bit of a panic attack. And whereas before in the car, I could sort of sit there and be like, oh, no big deal. And I'm just gonna like do this. I was trying to do that, but I was uncontrollably crying. I could not hide how I felt. I could not hide my emotions, right? And so this guy gets pissed off at me, pulls into an alleyway, kicks me out of his car, throws money at me, and then speeds away. And of course, that only made me feel even worse, right? And so I'm sitting there in this alleyway, you know, totally discarded, you know, had this really shitty night, and I have no idea where I am. I have no idea how I'm getting home. And so I sat there in that alleyway and cried for a couple of hours, right? And then, you know, after a bit, I looked up and I started to look around because I realized, because, you know, the tears, the sadness kind of turned into, bitch, you need to figure out, get the fuck up. We're gonna get home, right? And so I get up and I'm looking around and I realized that he had driven me to Hollywood. He had driven me behind Hollywood High and it had kicked me out by some of the dumpsters by Hollywood High, right? And I knew kind of how to get home from Hollywood, right? But I didn't have enough money from the money he gave me to actually get home, right? And so I'm walking down Hollywood Boulevard and I'm asking people for money. Unfortunately, some people gave me a little bit of money here and there. And I was able to get myself on a bus to go home, right? And I remember getting back to my home, and the area that I lived in, I grew up in, was very, very beautiful. And I was just so happy to be home. It was such a sunny day. I walk in, my parents are in the front eating, you know, their breakfast, and they don't say anything to me at all. I just go back into my room, and that's the end of the story, right? And so that was my first experience with BDSM. My first experience with BDSM was this guy forcing me to be dominant with him, you know? And I still think about how upsetting it is for me to be in so many you know, there's nothing about, like, the thing that bothers me about the men approaching me for me to be dominant is that I so aggressively and loudly proclaim who I am. A submissive, a bottom, none of that matters. I'm a tall black girl who likes herself, and so I must be a dom, right? I must be a dom. And I hate that. I hate that because it really robs me of my agency. I hate that because it's like this marriage between racism and transphobia, and like how all these things come together in a way that echoes only what a man wants from me, you know? there's nothing about me at all that says that I'm a dominant woman. But that's all people seem to read from me. All people seem to read from me is that I'm a dom. And I'll be real, coming out into the BDSM community in LA, it's definitely been really frustrating for me to have these conversations with people, to tell them that I am not a dom, and then have them be super disinterested in even talking to me after that. They just want to get their kick. And if they can't get it from me, then I'm not even worth talking to. It hurts that they would be really invested and engaged with me if only I were to perform that service for them, right? And I'll be real, the fact that so many people have read me as dominant and wanted me to be dom for them has made me think throughout several times in my life that I wanted to do sex work, you know, that I wanted to be a dom, you know, because I felt like I was always fighting against people who wanted that from me. And that got really frustrating. You know, if I was able to comfortably do that and make some money doing it, I probably would have. But to be honest with you guys, that experience kind of messed with me for quite some time. And a couple of months ago, believe it or not, I was at a munch and there Larry was, you know, I don't know what he's drinking, but he looks the same, you know, he looks exactly the same. And so, yeah, it's just another one of those situations where this guy took advantage of my vulnerability to get something that he wanted. And it didn't really feel great for me to kind of be pressured into doing something I didn't want to do, especially something that was so deeply triggering as making me dominate somebody. So yeah, that's the story. I know that was kind of a bummer story, but you guys wanted it, so here it is. You got it. So yeah, anyway, I would love to hear if anyone's had a similar experience. I'd also love to hear if you are somebody who is very firmly not on, very firmly not on one side of the DS dynamic. I would actually love to hear what your experiences are and why you very strongly feel how you do. When it comes to me domming or topping, really topping, you know, there's like this tactile interest of mine. Like, even though the way I was kind of traumatized was by throwing a whip, I kind of want to learn how to throw a whip, but not to do any sort of domination-y thing, but because I think learning how to throw a whip or learning how to throw floggers would be kind of fun, you know? And so I still never want to do that with a person. I still have no interest in doing that with a man. But it could be fun. So, you know, that's about as deep as it goes for me. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Right now you're looking at 2 videos that you can watch if you want to continue to sip true tea with me. In the corner, I've got several ways that you can send me a tip if you'd like to. And I would appreciate that since this is a kind of a hard month for me. So thank you for helping me buy food, those of you guys who have been sending me tips. So yeah, anyway, I'll see you guys next Tuesday and bye.